All right, on to chapter 3. I have my phone kind of perched in a weird way, so hopefully it holds. I hope you don't go falling off. Okay, chapter 3. Walking into the cafeteria that first day, I remembered the headmaster's words of advice about sitting with a group in the lunchroom. As much as I would have preferred to be by myself right then, I made my way through the lunch line, picked up my tray of meatloaf, green beans, and Jell-O with banana slices. That sounds horrible. Then ventured over to a table of boys I recognized from some of my classes. One boy, it was the chubby Sam Feeney, moved over easy enough as he continued the conversation. Anybody who thinks you can outrun a cutter with a gig is a pinhead. Let's ask the new kid. Baker, which is faster, a cutter or a gig? I had no idea what they were talking about, so I took the safe way out. I shrugged and said, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Well, what about the oars? Asked Robbie Dean. Do you prefer whiffs, wheeries, or rum-tums? Oh, whiffs or wheeries usually, but rum-tums'll do in a pinch. They looked at me steadily, I'm sure wondering what to make of me, when Preston Townsend said, So what brings an inlander like you to Maine? The way he asked the question, I decided his dad was probably a lawyer instead of the governor. I felt my face get hot. Just needed a change of scenery, I guess, was my weak reply. I hear it's so flat in Kansas that you can see all the way to the next state in every direction, Sam said. Is that true? I wouldn't know, I said, what with the waving wheat and the brilliant sunsets. I guess we don't bother to look too far away. I was putting up a good front, but my diversionary lines were running out. One more question, and my jitters would probably show through in either spilled milk or dripping sweat. Thinking fast, I decided to shift the focus to someone else's strangeness. So what's with the kid who never shows up to class, I asked. Early Auden, Preston answered. Not much to tell. His dad was on the board of trustees, had a heart attack and died. So now the kid gets a free ride here. But he picks and chooses what classes he wants to show up for. Sometimes he takes a seat and then leaves as soon as the teacher says something he disagrees with. He's so weird that nobody does anything about it. Yeah, Sam piped in. Last year he walked out of biology class and never came back just because Mr. Nelson said there are no venomous snakes in Maine. Early insisted there were still timber rattlesnakes up north and walked out. How come he's so sure there are timber rattlesnakes, I asked. Who knows? He's all fire sure about most things. Sometimes he has these weird fits where his eyes go all blank and he kind of twitches. They think having those fits messed up his brain somehow. The bell rang, ending any further discussion about the odd boy. But I knew there had to be more to the story than that. See you at PE, Baker. And don't forget your rum-tums. Preston smirked as he got up from the table. Coach Baynard stood at the deep end of the indoor pool, light reflecting off the water, which was in turn splashing ripples of light on the tile wall. The air was thick and moist, with a sharp scent of chlorine. He gave his whistle a firm blast that echoed around the room. Boys in the black swim trunks lined up, displaying an assortment of bare legs, long, short, mostly skinny, a few chunky, hairy, white, knobby-kneed, gangly, awkward. Coach blew his whistle again. All right, you yahoos, let's see what you can do with this. He hefted a 10-pound weight off the floor and threw it into the deep end. Dive in, then push or carry the weight as far as you can without coming up for air. Once you surface, that's your distance. Robbie Dean, you're up. Dean stood at the pool's edge, raising his spindly arms, with hands clasped above one shoulder, then the other, as if he were the reigning underwater moving champion of the world. Let me show you how it's done, fellas. After a few catcalls from the crowd, he grinned and dove into the water. The rest of us watched from the deck as he frog-kicked his way to the bottom, first pushing, then pulling on the weight. Robbie Dean got it halfway up the sloped floor before he came to the surface, sputtering and grinning. "Beat that, boys," Robbie Dean called. The boys on deck pointed and hollered as the weight slipped back to its starting position at the bottom of the deep end. You really showed us. Yeah, give us another lesson, why don't you? Sam Feeney was next. He got the brick up the incline before he had to come up for air. Preston Townsend did the best, pushing the brick halfway across the pool. The coach called out another name. Baker, you're up. I looked around, surprised, thinking there must be another Baker, then realized he was looking at me. Come on, son, you know how to swim, don't you? Of course I could swim. My mom took me to the pond near our house from the time I was little. I could swim faster and hold my breath longer than any boy close to my age. I can swim, I answered, taking my place at the pool's edge, my big toe pressed into the 8-foot marker, etched in red. The lights playing on the tile wall left me feeling unsteady, but with everyone's eyes on me, I dove in. I swam easily to the bottom, down by the drains. There was the 10-pound brick, waiting for me to be the first one to push it all the way across the pool. But something else caught my attention, something shiny, glimmering, a ring. I knew it had to be my imagination. My navigator ring was nowhere near this pool. Still, something shimmered near the drain. I'd been so excited when my dad gave me the ring just before he left for war. That was back when I thought it could make me a navigator like him, guiding a ship by the light of the stars. But that with the ring, I could always find my way. But after the Scout Survival Camp last July, which I barely survived, I knew these things weren't true. Like I'd told my mom, it was just a stupid ring. But now it weighed heavily on me, pulling me under. I reached for it in the bottom of the Morton Hill pool, the deep water pressing in around me. My ears hurt and my lungs were bursting, and then I couldn't see it anymore. Nothing glimmered, but it had been there. I pulled on the metal drain cap. It wouldn't budge. I felt sleepy, like my eyes couldn't stay open anymore, but I had seen it. It had been there. Suddenly, I felt strong hands clamp around my arms and pull me toward the surface. Air, light, still splashed on the tile walls, and a lot of faces staring at me. Coach pulled me toward the side, and some other hands dragged me out of the water. Is he breathing? Robbie Dean whispered. I sputtered and coughed, answering his question. Move out of the way, Coach barked. Hey, Baker, what are you doing? You were under for over a minute and didn't even touch the brick. Tears were lurking just behind my eyes. I feel kind of sick, I muttered. Right, you do look a little pale. Hit the locker room, kid. You'll get it next time. It had been there, that shiny ring. I grabbed a towel and stumbled my way to the locker room, only to hear a group of upperclassmen whooping and snapping towels at each other. I'm no genius, but even as cloudy-headed as I felt just then, I knew my skinny white legs would be all too easy a target in there. So I opened the first door I came to and followed the stairs down. I followed the stairs down a flight to the open doorway of a dimly lit workroom. My head still spun as I leaned back into the coolness of the metal door marked custodian. I closed my eyes, waiting for the feeling to pass, remembering. Our Boy Scout survival outing was in the woods of northeastern Kansas. The scout leader set each of us out on a course that we'd have to navigate using only landmarks, the stars, and our wits. We'd been preparing for weeks. We'd gone over the North Star, the Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, all the constellations. I could identify them all, but that day the sky was overcast. It was only supposed to be a mile out and a mile back. We'd have to rely on landmarks unless the clouds cleared. I knew I'd be done before it got dark and wouldn't need to use the stars anyway. But as I walked on that humid July evening, each tree looked like every other. One bush blended in with the next. Rocky paths meandered this way and that, leaving me so turned around I could barely tell which way was up. It was almost 10 o'clock at night before I heard the scoutmaster and the other scouts calling for me. The whole way home I had to listen to the boys teasing how I couldn't find my way out of a bushel basket and how they were glad my dad had a better sense of direction than I did, or his ship would have never found the shores of Normandy on D-Day. But sitting there on the way home, miserable and stewing in the back of the jostling pickup truck, I had no idea how lost I was soon to be. If I had known about my mom, what would happen to her, what could I have done differently? I don't know that anything would have changed what happened. Suddenly, I realized the water dripping from my swimsuit was making a small puddle around me. I opened my eyes and ventured past the doorway. The room was warm and hummed with a soft, crackling, airy sound. It seemed like a typical custodian's room, cluttered with all kinds of tools, hammers, pliers, wrenches, anything you would expect to find in the custodian's quarters, only it was much neater. My dad would have felt right at home here. A place for everything and everything in its place. But as I let my eyes roam around, I noticed things you wouldn't expect, like a cot, bookshelves, chalkboards filled with numbers, equations and drawings. Not just any drawings, but kind of connect the dot pictures. A hunter, a scorpion, a crab, a great bear. I recognized them. They were constellations. The bear was Ursa Major. There was also a bulletin board with several newspaper clippings tacked up. The headlines read, Black Bear Stalks the Appalachian Trail. Largest black bear tracks on record. Reward for kill or capture of great Appalachian bear. There was still the sound, airy like a long breath, only not that. I followed it until I came to an old phonograph with a record spinning on the turntable. You're up. But the needle was at the end, making only that rhythmic whispering sound. There was a collection of record albums all neatly placed on a shelf. I was about to see which record had been playing when I heard a voice from the back corner of the room.
They don't know where he's buried.
I spun around, gripping the towel about my shoulders. It was Early Auden.